So, what's up people and welcome to the Mission 118 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 118 came out a while ago, and as always I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. Okay, so when this arc started and we realized that this arc was about Garden and its other operatives besides Yor, I became extremely excited. I was expecting a really thrilling, heart-pumping sort of arc with regards to the way Garden operates besides Yor. And when we were introduced to Hemlock, I became even more excited, kind of expecting the Winston Wheeler versus Lloyd Forger sort of battle arc. And we did get a battle arc, but I forgot that this is Tatsuya Endo, so he does things in his own way. And although Garden is a pretty extreme organization, what we got was more comedy than action. Yes, we did get a lot of action, especially during that time when Hemlock was battling Yor. And we did get confirmation that the other members of Garden were extremely skilled at assassination. But I have to admit, and I think many will agree, this arc is more about comedy than it is about gut-wrenching action, right? And Hemlock, of all people, is the center of a lot of this comedy. And so 118 starts off where 117 left off. If you remember, at the end of 117, after Yor defeated Hemlock, Hemlock was so psychologically broken that she had to kind of carry him to get back to Matthew, who found the enemy location so that they can attack. And so 118 starts where, of course, they're about to attack. And as we expected, the mission itself wasn't the main point, since the mission was a relatively trivial one for Garden. This was basically the introduction of the characters, and especially Hemlock, who turns out to be basically the Fiona or Yuri of Garden, right? The fanatical individual. But how this chapter starts is very interesting because we actually get to see a lot more of Matthew's action than anybody else, and we realize that despite his age, he is really, really good at assassination. Although he is a handler rather than a field operative, you could tell that he was extremely skilled and may potentially have been a field operative in the past. And so you realize that the members of Garden, aside from the field operatives, are just as skilled, and you do get an understanding of just how formidable this group is. And so finally, after taking down the first few members of the group, Yor destroys their communication device so that they can't call outside for help. And after that, it's Yor that goes into operation by killing the other members of this hunting party. And although this would have been an ideal situation for Hemlock, since it feels like he enjoys killing, he was basically there looking like a zombie, still emotionally broken after Yor defeated him. And so he ends up giving away that the group is being attacked, and you could see the members of the hunting group going to attack him. And Yor becomes extremely worried because he's emotionally broken in zombie form. But it turns out that even in zombie form, he is able to destroy the enemy really effectively. And Yor's like, he's so strong. So despite it being an extremely comical situation, we still get the indication of just how formidable Hemlock is. And in fact, Yor takes advantage of this by just running around with Hemlock in front of her and letting Hemlock do all the killing. But eventually Hemlock comes back to his awareness, and he starts really getting angry at the group because they can only attack when they're in a group of people, basically saying how much of a coward they were. But to be honest, considering how powerful each member of Garden is, I could understand that the enemy group was only being able to attack once they were organized into a group. But that didn't do anything, since Hemlock just destroyed every one of them And he was so into his uncontrollable rage that he almost attacked Yor as well. And if Yor wasn't skilled herself, she might have gotten killed in his rage melee, right? But in any case, yeah, the entire base was utterly destroyed after their attack. And so the mission is done and they're about to leave when Hemlock says, "You guys go ahead, I'll leave by myself." He mentioned that it was now inappropriate for him to be accompanying them considering the situation that he put them in. And although Yor was worried, Matthew decided to leave as Hemlock wished. And so now we see Hemlock. We're getting into this kind of this Damien Anya sort of situation. You could see the hate that he has with regards to Yor and how he still feels that Yor is getting too soft. His image of her being extremely soft is extremely comical. But he's starting to wonder, maybe if he had a relationship, he would get stronger as well. But of course, that only lasts for a few seconds, and he realizes that he cannot waver because his original belief of standing alone to become more powerful was the correct one. Yeah, I got a feeling that if Hemlock was to have a relationship, the best person to have a relationship was with Fiona. If they weren't in enemy factions, they would really get along well with each other, I would think. And then they could get off of Lloyd and Yor's back with regards to relationships. But what we find out is that due to the comments that Hemlock made, Yor is worried with regards to her relationship with her family. And she starts asking Matthew, who is also married, whether it's a mistake to be married and an assassin. And of course, Matthew being Matthew does not say no. What he says is that that's actually a relatively complicated question. And it all depends upon the circumstances and the situation and the beliefs that each individual has. Some people will actually gain strength by needing somebody to protect, while others will actually become weak because that will be their weakness. And so Yor says, "So then I have to choose between whether I want to become stronger or not." And Matthew answers, "Why do you have to choose? So long as you understand what your work is and you're devoted to it, and that is your highest priority, then why do you have to make a choice?" And continuing to think about it, she asks Matthew, why did he get married? And Matthew replies that he actually was already married when he joined Garden, but it was his choice to remain together. And he himself cannot say whether that was the best choice that he made under the circumstances, because he does seriously commit himself to Garden, and he takes pride in the work that he has done. And he's not sure what would happen if his wife ever discovered his true identity, but his hope is that she would be reasonable in that situation. And that belief is what keeps them together, and so long as he believes that way, he will continue to do so. Now, I don't know if that was the answer that Yor wanted to hear. I think Yor wanted to hear something that was more conclusive towards, yes, you should have a relationship. But what Matthew was doing was giving her the truth, the honest reply to what he believes. And I think it was more appropriate because there is no black and white with regards to whether one's actions is correct or not. And so Yor starts thinking about her situation and wondering, in her case, is it proper that she is in a marriage situation, considering the marriage in her case is actually just a cover and not even real the way it is for Matthew. But Matthew continues, with regards to his marriage, it's not the situation that Hemlock was describing, all lovey-dovey and all, but he has committed that until he dies, he will wear this mask to deceive her. And maybe that is selfish of him, but that is the decision that he made. And if you yourself, Yor, are having second thoughts about your own marriage, then maybe that is the biggest reason you should break up. Because if you're not fully committed to your situation, then right or wrong, that is probably the biggest obstacle in your objective. And of course, that probably hit harder to Yor than anything else Matthew said. And she started wondering about whether she is fully committed to this relationship, and if she is caring of the people in her family, then does being with them jeopardize their situation and put them into greater danger? And we don't get an answer to how she concluded her questions, because the chapter ends where Yor goes to talk to Lloyd, but we don't get the conversation that follows. And we expect that chapter 119 will be all about that conversation. Now, it's interesting. It will be interesting to see how this goes, because right now, according to Anya, Lloyd is making his mission report for Wise. So now Yor is about to walk into Lloyd making his report, and will there be some sort of revelation of both of them not being honest about the relationship? I think it would be too sudden if all of this was revealed at once, but I do expect that because we got to this situation, that Tatsuya Endo brought this chapter to this point where Yor is thinking so seriously about the relationship, it's not going to be something that will be brushed off lightly. At least I don't think so. Yes, Tatsuya Endo can twist things and make it into a comedy situation once again, but usually whenever it's a relationship drama sort of situation, he ends up being quite a bit more serious. And so long as Lloyd doesn't get into his honey trap mission, then there may be honesty between the discussion that follows. But we will have to wait until chapter 119 to see what happens. And once that chapter comes out, I'll make another video and hope you join me at that time. But this is the chapter 118 discussion of Spy Family. What do you think happened with Yor's conclusion? And how do you think this conversation will go in the future? It'll be interesting because this looks like somewhat another pivotal point with regards to their relationship. But in any case, your comments will be greatly appreciated. And until the next chapter, happy manga reading. And as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.